So this morning our talk is entitled The Science of Mind, a Philosophy, a Faith, a Way of Life. And yes, it is based on the title of the Science of Mind textbook, and it is definitely a life changer, a game changer. In the very beginning of the book, Dr. Holmes writes this. And keep in mind as we talk today that he wrote this about 100 years ago. And none of his ideas are really different, or not that much different if they're already that you tweak a little bit. Maybe the hymn I sometimes tweak. He wrote this: "These lessons are dedicated to that truth which frees man from himself and sets him on the pathway of a new experience, which enables him to see through the mist to the eternal and changeless reality." Well, if you're going to sum up Science of Mind, that's probably a pretty good one. So we're going to break the talk into three different parts today. First of all, looking at what is meant by the idea of a philosophy. In the Oxford Dictionary, philosophy is defined as the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, or the study of a theoretical basis of a particular branch of knowledge or experience. I would say that our idea of philosophy and science of mind is slightly different. Holmes defines it in several different ways throughout the book, and one of them is a man's idea of life, a woman's idea of life. Each individual's idea of life, that becomes your own philosophical viewpoint. Your idea of life, meaning all that is. So philosophy has been defined as the science of things divine and human. Holmes dearly calls it practical wisdom. Your philosophy is a practical wisdom within you. Philosophy has always transcended science because philosophy deals with the causes, while science deals with the effects. Many things which philosophy has taught for thousands of years are today being demonstrated by science. And that was true in his time, and 100 years later, it's still true. Science is still opening us up to the truths, that which is provable. And so philosophy being an idea of life, therefore out of necessity must be personal to each one of us. That's a part of our we believe statements, that God, life, is personal to each one of us. Generally, I would say in Science of Mind that our concept of the idea of life is one of oneness, a concept of oneness. We could call it consciousness. In quantum, it is the ground of all being, God, consciousness. And this consciousness is a union of the presence and the principle as they operate as a law or as laws to create in life. In the Science of Mind text on page 212, if you're interested in reading about this, because this, for me, really helps me when I, as Bibi read about, it's easy to be thankful when the things that are coming at us are good. What do we do with those other times? And those other times are about realizing truth and seeing perfection, seeing beyond the form, seeing beyond the situation, and seeing perfection. And Ernest Holmes has a whole section in this on to 12 called Seeing Perfection. And what he's talking about is the idea that we see perfection so completely, so strongly, that the good becomes the result. That which we desire to be our result becomes that perfection that we see, that we know, that we hold to be the truth. And it's the idea that we do not treat a sick person. We deal only with the idea of a spiritual person because we are dealing with a mental law. When we're dealing with the idea of life, of consciousness, we are dealing with a mental law. And so it works according to the cause and effect idea that creates it. So that seeing of perfection transforms into the goodness. So we keep that flow going. And since we don't want to activate any vibrational energies of suffering, of pain, of fear, of guilt, of anything negative, we want to recognize that the perfection in ourselves, in our lives, or if we're treating for others, is what we're seeing. We are seeing that spiritual perfection, that wholeness, that goodness, that life that is within each and every situation. And it is important to know that we are not the creators. We are not actually creating the healing or the perfect idea manifesting. We are not creating the perfect body. Rather, we are revealing an idea within our own mind, which is of itself already perfect. And so it is not a process in the mind of God, it already is. But for us sometimes it seems like a process because we're informed and some of the ideas that we have are informed. So it is not really a process, and to the degree that we can step out of seeing it as a process and seeing it as a perfection that already is a spiritual idea, we create more of it. It is a revelation through our mind of the perfection and perfectness that life already is.
I think it's interesting that the subtitle of Science of Mind is a philosophy, a faith, a way of life. And they start off with the word philosophy. This teaching is a philosophy. It's not a religion, it's a philosophy. And quite often when people ask me what we do here at Center for Spiritual Living, I say, well, we teach a spiritual philosophy that incorporates all spiritual traditions as one, and we look for the common truths in all of them. We are not a religion. That's why we don't call ourselves the Church of Science of Mind, or whatever we call ourselves, the Center for Spiritual Living. It takes away those connotations of being churchy, because we're not necessarily a religion. We're not even a religion at all, actually. The literal word religion means reconnecting with God. And if God is all that is, we cannot possibly ever be disconnected. So why would we have any need to reconnect to something we're not separate from? It's from a simple mathematical proposition. When we use the word all, in terms of God is all that is, we recognize that the full power and presence of divinity is equally present in every aspect that can be said to have being, which would be including us. It includes each of us, and beyond that, it is true of every atom and cell in our physical existence. And if it's true of each of us, it must be true of all of us collectively as well. So we honor all spiritual traditions and all people and seek the commonalities between all of us. And if that weren't already enough, we also incorporate philosophy of the ages and modern science. And I actually have just used a philosophical scientific process to describe how we use philosophy and science in science of mind, starting from a principle that God is all that is, and describing how that works level by level till it gets to the point where we recognize that we are one with all that is, and all that is one with us. It's a simple scientific proposition. It's a logical progression that results in a truth principle, oneness. By incorporating these fields of study into our teaching, we have a spiritual tradition that is logical and provable. To me, that's a little bit different. To me, that's religion 2.0. It's a different way of looking at spirituality. We are the place where science and spirituality meet. We don't only talk about the nature of God, we can back it up with scientific data. We can trace the creative process back to our originating thoughts, like following a paper trail, and we identify causes for the conditions and circumstances in our lives. Once we understand the process, we can start at the beginning of the process, and we can initiate causes that will bring about all that we desire to experience in our lives. It's a very powerful tool. Maybe we're using spiritual practices, or we may be using philosophical and scientific principles, or maybe we're just using both, always. Here's a wonderful quote that I found this week that backs it all up. Carl Sagan, thought by many to be atheist, but he wasn't. He never claimed to be atheist. In fact, he claimed to be spiritual. A great scientist. He says, science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality.
That's awesome. It's perfect for this. So now we come to faith. And faith, again, is a mental attitude. It's a mental attitude that is so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. And that's sometimes said in Science of Mind like this. It's when you know, and you know that you know. Holmes wrote that we can consciously generate faith. We can consciously generate faith through the way that we think, the ideas that we hold, and the conversations that we engage in. Faith means to have a belief in the presence of an invisible principle and law which directly and specifically responds to those thoughts that we are holding. These words are especially meaningful for me because I find that this is where the rubber hits the road, I guess is the saying. Faith is complete when it is both a conscious and subjective acceptance. It's not enough to just go around and saying affirmations willy-nilly. If deep-seated within us is an old belief system that keeps us from seeing that reality. Sooner or later, if I go around saying, oh, I always have thousands of dollars in my pocketbook all the time, and every time I spend them, I have thousands more of thousands of dollars in my pocketbook. And then one day I say, I've been saying these affirmations for 10 years now, and I have never even seen a $1,000 bill yet. This isn't working. No, it isn't working because you bought into something that is a belief system within you. It's not just saying an affirmation willy-nilly. It's making that subconscious idea within us align with that idea of that God isn't $1,000 bills. God is abundance. God is abundant good. And so it is aligning our thought with that abundant good that brings us to that place. Jesus said it this way, thy faith has made thee whole. He was reminding people who were giving him the credit for the good works that it was not him, but rather their belief in the invisible principle. that was operating for good in their life, that was revealing and demonstrating truths. So I'm going to repeat again, faith occurs, little different words. Faith occurs when our conscious thoughts and our subconscious thoughts are in agreement. And I have a great story I found. I talked with David. I was looking for an example because you know I love stories and I love examples. And I was looking and I thought, well, I can use relationships, but I use those a lot. I can use health of the body, but I use that a lot. I could use money again, but I use that a lot. What else do people want? People want to feel good. And we found this great little story that talks about it. It's about fear and overcoming fear. Because fear is one of those activations that we do within ourselves with those subconscious ideas that we've taken on from someone or something else at some point, and they are deeply ingrained within our thought processes. They just aren't on the top. So here's the story. There was a woman who wanted to overcome her fears, and so she asked fear within herself this question: how can I defeat you? And fear responded, and the woman listened. This is what fear said. My weapons are that I talk fast and I get very close to your face. Then you get completely unnerved and you do whatever I say. If you don't do what I tell you, I have no power. You can listen to me. You can have respect for me. You can even be convinced by me. Monkey mind. But if you don't do what I say, I have no power. That is pretty powerful, I think. Because very often we do what fear says. And fear, I had an experience of that just this week where lucky David, he got to listen to me until I get to the point where I was like, oh darn, once again, I'm fleeing the situation so that I don't get hurt again. Fight, fright, flight. Those are the three most common things that we do when we feel fear. Now, I had no idea when I started out that I was feeling fear. I thought I was just making wise decisions. But I wasn't. I was running from not wanting to be hurt again. Why? Go back full circle to what I said at the beginning. We all want to feel good. We want to feel good. We want to feel happy. We want life to go smoothly. So if we don't do what fear is telling us to do, then we can do what our inner perfection is telling us to do. And then we make a match between our heart and our head. And that's when we're in balance and we feel fine-tuned and in touch with the God of our being.
Science of Mind is a faith-based teaching. And faith is the foundation of our healing traditions in Science of Mind, and also all those other principles that Deborah was talking about, abundance and so on. And going back to conversations that I have with people about what Science of Mind is, I used to have the sign on the side of the car that said Center for Spiritual Living, and people would come up and ask what that meant. And so I had lots of conversations, and I'm sure maybe you do too when you talk about religion and spirituality with people, and they want to know what that is. And I believe the most common question I heard was, are you Christian? And my answer back was, well, yes, and not necessarily maybe the way you are, and I thought that offended people, so I stopped saying that. Started saying, well, yes, and more. And that it didn't seem to offend people as much, but it always sparked more conversation. I've noticed that fundamental Christianity has moved away from asking if one is Christian, and now they ask, are you a believer? And of course, if I'm asked that question, I have to say, well, of course I am. Yes. But I say, well, exactly what do you mean by believing? Believe what? And they say, well, are you a faith-based religion? Well, first of all, we're not a religion. But I say, yes, we are. We are faith-based. It's, in fact, it's the foundation of all that we teach. And so they quite often would assume that if they ask, are you a believer or are you a faith-based organization, that we would believe exactly the same things that they do. And I would have to say that we may very likely believe many, if not all, the same things that they believe, but we maybe not ascribe to their theology. But what I like is the fact that I can see that we do believe basically the same things. So Christianity can be a science of mind tradition, in a way. If they were to ask if we follow the teachings of Jesus, I would very easily say, yes, we do. And the more accurate answer, I think, would be that we follow the teachings of Jesus, but not exclusively. We also follow the teaching of other spiritual traditions, but none of them exclusively. We find we actually believe all of them collectively and find the commonalities. I found this, in fact, I've seen it quite often on social media, the saying that someone asked, what is your religion? And I said, all the paths that lead to the light. I thought, wow, that's really science of mind, isn't it? It's really true of who we are. Belief and faith are not bound by theological boundaries. And I do believe it is the fundamental point of science of mind in our belief systems. Faith is a cornerstone of our spiritual philosophy. We heard the saying, change your thinking, change your life. And that is because thoughts influence our beliefs, and beliefs are the foundation of faith. And faith rises to the level of mere thought to a point of critical mass that brings thought into manifestation. Oh my gosh, is that another one of those logical progressions that I was talking about scientifically? Yes. We actually believe that we can bring our thoughts into manifestation scientifically and spiritually at the same time. So as we do that, we create a unique way of life. So we come to the third aspect, philosophy, faith, and a way of life. Science of mind is a way of life. We are living the science of mind, and living the science of mind is putting this teaching into practice. We quite often try to find the applicable part of our talks and include that to make sure people know how you can apply this and actually use it in everyday life. And that's a joy more than a challenge, I think. We use spiritual practices to condition our thinking to the point where we can achieve observable, recognizable results. We can literally bring thoughts into manifestation, and when we learn to do that habitually, regularly, easily, and effortlessly, we can be said to be using science of mind as a way of life. We can be said to be living the science of mind. Now it takes practice because we are conditioning our thought processes and belief systems that we acquired through our entire life experiences. Not only at the conscious level, but also at a deeper level, redefining our unconscious beliefs to support our conscious desires. And that takes some practice. It takes some powerful inner work. This happens every time we think, actually. We use science of mind every time we think. And according to research, the average person has approximately 60,000 thoughts per day. It hardly gives us time to do anything else, does it? Doesn't it? So science of mind is undeniably a way of life if we're using our thoughts.
Yeah, and we never stop learning. You know, I just got to share with you one of those, when I had my little episode this week, one of the things he said to me was, "Okay, well, I'm going to science of mind you now." Our kids used to say that growing up. "Are you just science of minding me?" So it's become a household joke that we love. We're going to end today with a poem that is also in the beginning of the textbook from Ernest Holmes. And it is just beautiful, warm and cuddly. "Peace be unto thee, stranger. Enter and be not afraid. I have left the gate open, and thou art welcome to my home. There is room in my home for all. I have swept the hearth and lighted the fire. The room is warm and cheerful, and you will find comfort and rest within. The table is laid, and the fruits of life are spread before thee. The wine is here also, it sparkles in the light. I have set a chair for you, where the sunbeams dance through the shade. Sit and rest and refresh your soul. Eat of the fruit and drink the wine. All is yours, and you are welcome." And so it is.